7th of October, and myself, Amelia, and Shannon have had this idea that we are going to read through the entirety of the season of Quartet by Ali Smith. So obviously we are starting with the first one. We are starting with Autumn, and I am 53 pages in, and I am so hooked on this. I will give the caveat that I listened to the audiobook of this, my 2020, I think, and I didn't love it. And I think that this change of situation, this change of reading situation, is working for me. I think reading it with my eyeballs is making me enjoy the story a lot more. This is so atmospheric. I'm reading it on like the darkest day of the year so far, of like autumn. I'm reading it on a cold and dreary, and it is absolutely pissing rain outside, but it's also really humid, so I've got my fan going over there in the background. You can barely see it. I am so encapsulated by this book. I thought that it was set in the lead up to the Brexit referendum. It's actually set a couple of weeks afterwards. And you can feel this kind of hatred in the air. You can feel this I'm better than you situation that a lot of people thought the whole way through the Brexit referendum and in the couple of weeks afterward. I'm encapsulated by it. I'm very likely going to finish it today. It is 10 to 2 in the afternoon. I'm very likely going to finish it because it's super short. It's only about 290 pages. And I am so hooked on this. I will keep you updated on my thoughts, but I'm so excited about it. Monday morning. I have got coffee, I have got breakfast, I have got a meeting in 5 minutes. But I am going to tell you that I finished Autumn before I go into the meeting. It kind of fell apart for me a little bit towards the end because the relationship between Daniel and Elizabeth, which had been pretty platonic up until then, and that I had said I had really enjoyed it as like a grandfather-granddaughter relationship the whole way through the book. At around the age of 16, 17, Elizabeth starts falling for Daniel, and there are some instances of people questioning Daniel and Elizabeth's relationship. And you know what? I don't think that we needed that in this book. I don't think that that was something that we needed. So that knocked down pretty much an entire star for me. But something that I really enjoyed about this book, there were a couple of things. One of them was a kind of a recurring thread earlier on in the book where Elizabeth is just trying to get her passport renewed and has to go to the post office about 20 times because, oh, your photo isn't the right measurements that we wanted it to, or your eyes aren't in the little lines that we have, or there's a hair falling over your face, so you're not going to be recognized. And I think that that's something that most of us can kind of associate with, especially with the heartache of trying to get your passport renewed in the first place. It's such an arduous, stressful time. It's something that a lot of people can associate with, especially because there's so much bureaucracy involved in it. And there is quite a lot of bureaucracy seen in this book. There's also a lot of hatred that you can see throughout it, especially because of the time that it's set, a couple of weeks after the Brexit referendum. You can see a whole lot of hatred between people. You can see a whole lot of I'm better than you and one-upmanship. And there is an instance of a hate crime in this book. There is some. It's a very light hate crime. It's some graffiti where somebody has just said, go the fuck home. But it's rough to read it still at the same time. It's very rough to think that this is something that had happened. There's also a mention of the murder of Joe Cox after the fact that it had happened. And I think that because I was listening to it as an audiobook and I was doing like some pretty intensive stuff at work at the time when I was listening to it, I think that's why I thought it had happened before Brexit, because Joe's murder had happened pretty much just before the Brexit referendum. So I think that's why I thought it was happening before then. There is a chapter that I really enjoyed where it's all across the country. It's how most of the sentences in this starts. It's like all across the country, people are waking up to hatred. All across the country, people are baking bread with each other. All across the country, this is happening. All across the country. And I thought that was so wonderfully written. I really think that that was a great chapter. I'm interested to see what the other seasons are going to be like. I have a feeling winter is going to be particularly bleak because it is winter. Spring will be like a kind of a rebirth, a reimagining, a bit more happy, a bit more sunshine. And I think summer is going to be like a really great ending. It's going to be really like bright. I'm so interested to see where we're going to go with this. I don't think we're going to have the same characters across the series as we did previously, which I did before. Um, I did kind of wonder, oh, do Elizabeth and Daniel turn up again in this book, maybe as like a side character or maybe as the main character? I don't think that's going to happen. But I'm interested in this so far. I haven't been turned off of it enough that I don't want to keep reading. Today we start with winter, and I have a couple of options on how I can read it, so I'm going to try and double chop. I'm going to start with the audiobook while I'm finishing off my workday. It's about 3 in the evening, and I'm going to keep working until about 5:30, 6. So get a bit of the audiobook done between now and then. And whatever I have left to read, I have got an e-copy of it from my local library, so I will pick the pace back up. I'm not entirely sure what winter is going to be about. It's obviously going to be something about Christmas. There's obviously going to be something about death, in the kind of sense of the world dying, the world, like trees decaying, trees having no leaves, coldness, wintry weather. I'm expecting a lot of that kind of stuff, but I'm not entirely sure if the story from autumn is going to carry on. I'm not entirely sure if we're even going to see any of the same characters. I don't know how much kind of interweaving is going to be in the stories, but I'm excited to see how it's going to go. I'm also excited to see how they're going to read as an audiobook, because I did try an audiobook for one of these before and I didn't entirely love it. But let me see if I can change my mind here. Let me see if it works a little bit better this time. I did not get any B-roll this time because I've actually finished Winter a lot quicker than I expected to. I finished it all as an audiobook and I'm still processing it. I'm still trying to come to terms with what I actually think about this one. I didn't enjoy it as much as I did Autumn. I can tell you that for free. I did not enjoy Winter in the same way that I did Autumn, and I think that a lot of that is down to the characters. In this book, you are following a couple of different people. You are following Sophia, who is estranged from her sister Iris, and you are also following Sophia's adult son Arthur, or Art, who was dating a woman named Charlotte for a couple of months, but they have now separated. And Art is going back to his mother's huge, sprawling country house for Christmas. And he's told her that Charlotte is going to come with him and he's going to introduce the family to her, except that they've broken up. So he comes across a woman at a bus stop and he offers her £1,000 to basically pretend to be his girlfriend. So she pretends to be Charlotte for most of the book. I think her name is actually Ivy. I did not enjoy reading about Sophia. I feel like she was your absolute typical okay boomer type person, and she also reminded me of somebody in my past who was really combative and who would stop talking to people for completely petty reasons. And I feel like a lot of the reason that Sophia and Iris had fallen out is because of a petty reason. And you do find out what the reasons were, and they were super petty. There was also kind of like a fever dream for me halfway through this book where one of the characters comes home either from work or from having been out for the evening and is basically followed by a car with an elderly gentleman in it who keeps like not attacking them, but just basically making themselves a nuisance. And then a couple of days later, the same gentleman is sitting in their kitchen as they come home from work or being out or whatever it was. And that unsettled me so much. But I cannot remember for the life of me who the woman was. It might have been Iris, it might have been Charlotte, it might have been Sophia. I have no recollection of who it was. I just remember that I was out for a walk while I was listening to that part of the story, and it terrified my little tiny brain to think that I could come home and there would be somebody sitting on my couch. Overall, this was weaker than Autumn. Overall, I didn't enjoy it as much. And I think it was something that took away from it is that in this book, you are not celebrating the celebration of Christmas. Like, Christmas is mentioned, snow is mentioned, but it's very much a bleak midwinter book rather than a joy of Christmas book. And there are specific Christmases that are mentioned, such as, for some reason, Christmas 1977, when Charlie Chaplin passed away. And that's made a huge, big deal in this book, and then is not mentioned ever again. I think overall, this one didn't work for me. We are all obviously
going to keep going with spring. We are going to keep going with the rest of the series. And I really hope that we're going to go like a dip and then we're just going to go straight back.
I'm starting this on a spring day that almost feels like summer. It's going to be about 27, 28 degrees Celsius later on this evening, but I have got to get spring done before I can read summer. I am not entirely sure what spring is going to be about. And I'm very hopeful that it's going to be better than winter was, because I genuinely did not have a very good time while I was reading it. If it's going to be the same vibe as winter was, I'm not entirely sure I'm going to finish it. So I'm going to give it a really good go. I have a feeling it's going to be something about rebirth and regrowth and starting anew. So I think it might be something about somebody moving to a new place and starting a new life there, or a pregnant woman giving birth. I'm not sure what it's going to be about, but I have a feeling that something about rebirth is going to be in there somewhere. It's the first DNF of the series. I just don't particularly care about these people. I don't particularly need to know what's happening in their lives or what are they doing, or there is quite a lot happening. I will say that there's quite a lot happening in this book and it's very heavy. There is a lot of talk about suicidal ideation. There's a lot of talk about suicidal thoughts, about intent to take your own life. And that's quite difficult to read and it is quite heavy, especially when it happens quite early on in the book. I think it happens within the first maybe 3 or 4 chapters. And you also learn about the death of Paddy, who I had thought was Richard, the first character that we meet in this book. I had thought that Paddy was Richard's same-sex partner, and then you go on to discover that actually Paddy was a woman. I think it must be short for Patricia. And there was so much that I had to go back and think, wait, what the hell was happening here? What have I missed? What's going on? And I kind of realized that I didn't want to go back and find out, and I didn't really need to keep going and find out what's happening further. Unfortunately, this one just did not work for me at all. There were some redeeming qualities to Winter that kept me going, but this one, we're gonna have to say goodbye already. It's time to get the final one of the series started. I'm gonna start Summer this evening as one of my audiobooks. I'm gonna start Summer this evening. I've got the audiobook of it from, I think it's from one of my libraries. I'm gonna start it, and I am going in with little to no expectations. I'm going in with the knowledge that I haven't particularly loved all of the other books that have been in the series so far. Autumn was good. Autumn was fine. Winter was kind of a hit and miss. I DNF'd spring. So there's definitely room for improvement with summer. I have a feeling that since summer is the brightest season of the year, it's the warmest, it's usually the happiest, I have a feeling it's going to be something about happiness, brightness, but also knowing Ali Smith, it's probably going to be a whole lot of political chaos. I have absolutely no idea what's going to happen. I've gone into it relatively blind, so let's just see how we go. Look how much things are improving. You're actually going to get a halfway review this time. It's fine. It's not my favorite book of the series. It's definitely not my least favorite book of the series. But what I do like and what I do appreciate is that we are actually seeing characters from the previous books turning up here. That is what I wanted from this entire series. I wanted it to be interconnected. I wanted you to see people that you've seen in this book before and now you're seeing them again. I wanted there to be some level of interweaving stories. And this time you are getting that. It's not a very positive story, though. It's not a very uplifting one. Not the kind of vibe that I thought we would go into for summer. This one is about Robert and Sasha, who are siblings. They are teenagers, I believe, at the start of the book. And you're going through life with them. And then you go back in time to the 1930s and the rise of the Nazis in Germany. And you are also talking to Daniel Gluck. And Daniel is one of the main characters in Autumn. It was so interesting to see a part of his childhood and a part of his backstory that we didn't really delve into back in Autumn, all the way back then. It is harrowing to read it. There's a lot that's happening to his dad that is truly heartbreaking to read. This is what I wanted out of the entire series. I wanted to see more interconnectivity in the entire thing. I wanted to see characters turning up again who I've seen before and who I know from other stories. It's just a kind of a pity that I've had to wait all of this time to finally get that. Well, hasn't this series been a thing? I'm finished with Summer, and I can tell you right here, right now, this is a series, this is an entire book that is just not going to stick with me. I do enjoy literary fiction, I do really like reading that genre, but there was just something about this particular series of books that I didn't enjoy. It could be a thing that I'm not intelligent enough for these. I am not so engrossed with the British culture. It's not the culture that I've grown up with. I will say that at the end of Summer, I did really enjoy that you get to see some of the characters that you have seen previously. You get to see Art from Winter, you get to see Daniel from Autumn. I really enjoyed that little kind of catch-up and seeing where everybody was. But overall, this is a series just didn't do it for me. Should I have done what Shannon and Amelia did and just given up halfway through? Yes. Am I too stubborn to have done that? Also, yes. But we've gotten to the end of it. We've made our journey. I don't think it's a road I'm going to go back on anymore. But if you have made it to the end of this video, leave me a leaf or like a plant emoji that you would associate with one of the seasons that I have just read. Don't forget to like and subscribe because I have new videos up every week. Now, get on out of here.